Hello, everyone. I'm Angela Morabito, and today I have the honor of being joined by Bethany Mandel. She's the author of Stolen Youth, a great new book about how gender ideology is impacting America's kids. Bethany, thank you so much for being here.
Thank you so much for having me, Angela. I appreciate it.
In your book, you talk about how this woke ideology is coming at children from all angles, but especially how it's kind of accelerated in the schools. And while a lot of parents woke up to this because of the COVID lockdowns, we know it didn't happen overnight. So, in your view, how did this progressive politics become so deeply embedded in our schools?
So it started as all bad ideas do in America's universities. And so it started in women's studies departments, ironically, because now we can't define what a woman is. And it started in the upper echelons of academia, and then it has a trickle down effect. And so, in America's universities, this is where many people are educated who go on to the professional class, and one of them is teachers. And so it became very popular among sort of the teachers and HR professionals and banks and whatnot to parrot these lines. And so I think one of the first ways that we should have picked up on this, and a lot of people didn't, was we redefined Latinx. That became like how you describe someone who is Hispanic. And we started redefining things and rewriting history. And so the 1619 Project, one of the moments where we saw a complete rewriting of history in a way that is not in any way accurate. And then it really accelerated over COVID. And we saw, I think for the first time, parents were deeply uncomfortable with what their kids were learning. And it was highly sexualized content. It didn't happen overnight, but I think that parents really woke up to it over COVID.
In your book, you talk about how when a child comes out as transgender, whether that's actually true or not, just when a kid decides to use a new name and pronouns, so many schools are encouraging this, celebrating this, even if it's not what's right for the child. But I also want to address the impact on all of that child's classmates when they say you must use a new name, you must address this person as the opposite gender.
Yeah.
So many of these kids don't really have an understanding of gender yet. So what's the effect on kids who are being forced to participate in this, even on someone else's behalf?
Yeah, so it is very confusing, and people are sort of scared into participating in it because there are threats that come from school administrators, that if you call someone by the wrong pronoun, it's misgendering and dead naming, and people are really scared into silence because the force that they use in order to sort of inflict this on us and to force it on us is quite severe. There was one young woman I spoke to. I spoke to her mother in the book, and she talked about how she was sort of trading insults with a kid in a schoolyard taunts kind of way, like something that you and I did as kids. And he called her a lesbian and she called him gay, and it was in a text message, and she one versus the other. And the text message was shown to school administrators, and school administrators responded by stripping her of her status as class president. And so she was terrified from ever sort of talking about anything gender or sexuality related ever again, because she said, I don't know what they could do to me next, but obviously there is retribution here if I misstep. And she later found herself in a school sleepover situation at a summer camp over a weekend, and one of the counselors who was staffing her bunk, she didn't know the gender identity of, and that person had facial hair and went by the name Nick, and this person was staffing a female bunk, and she was too scared to say she was scared. And that's, to me, what is most sort of where this manifests in the most dangerous way, because girls are scared into silence. And it's not just girls. Also, I mean, the administrators really should have known better, right? And no one said anything. And a lot of that is because it's California state law that you have to put people in bunks of their own of their stated gender identity, no matter what their biological sex is. And so this has sort of led to perfect storm of everyone being too scared to say, this doesn't seem right. This doesn't seem like a good idea.
These poor kids are being put into situations that they know are wrong, but as you mentioned, they are bullied into silence, oftentimes by adults who say, "Well, this is our
Yeah.
policy," and that's so true not only in sleeping arrangements, just terrifying, but also on sports teams. And I think about youth sports and how formative that is for so many people. And all of a sudden, you have little girls who are saying, "Well, you better get in the swim race with a boy, or you better, play volleyball, play basketball
Yeah.
against someone who is naturally so much stronger and faster than a biological female could
Yeah.
ever be." What does this do to youth sports?
So, I mean, it destroys girls' sports. There is no future of girls' sports. I mean, if you look at sort of an individual race or an individual match, if a biological male enters the race, they're automatically at a disadvantage. I've told this story a few times over the course of our promoting this book. When I was a kid, we were I think we were on the varsity team and we were scrimmaging the JV team. Whatever it was, there was an age disparity in which the girls were older, and we were playing soccer, and I was goalie. And there was a boy charging at me with the ball, and it was sort of just like tunnel vision. It was just me and him. And he kicked the ball at me, and I took it right in the face. And I was knocked unconscious. I woke up. I like 1 sec. The memory of it is someone's charging at me with the ball, and I'm ready. And the next moment, there's a crowd of people around me, and I'm on the ground. And I'm not sure if it was an official rule or whatever, but the coach told me afterwards, that will never happen again. We will never let boys and girls scrimmage together again, because you got really hurt because we made a bad decision as adults, and I'm sorry, and I dropped the ball. So I don't know if that was like an official school decision or if it was just that coach, but the lesson of it was boys and girls should not be playing sports together because there is an inherent strength differential. And now I think about that moment now. My coach couldn't make that reassurance to me, and that scenario is playing out, literally playing out, in schools across the country, and it's deeply unfair, but it's also dangerous. And I think that's a point that not enough people make when we sort of talk about saving women's sports. We talk a lot about swimming and weightlifting, and you're already at a total disadvantage. But what really worries me is the safety aspect.
I think that is such an important point to make. And I've talked to, parents of student athletes who have faced the same thing where somebody
Yeah.
gets really, really injured. Then it's, well, we wanted to be polite, or we didn't want to ruffle feathers. We didn't know what the rules were. But those rules may be about to change if President Biden's proposed Title IX rule gets codified into
Yeah.
law. We're expecting a final rule here in the next few months, which would force schools to treat students in line with their gender identity, not their biological sex. So this means
Yeah.
that access to a women's sports team, a women's locker room,
Yes.
restroom, dormitory is based on nothing more than raising your hand and saying, "I identify as female today."
Yeah.
What effect would that have on the national scale to this rising generation?
So one of the things that I talk about in Soul and Youth, and I think safety is my biggest concern. And so, on one hand, we just spent several years being told, believe all women, and men are predators. But then also, a man would never, under any circumstances, declare a different gender identity in order to access these spaces. That's not right. So that's my first sort of concern, is sort of individual instances of abuse. But my other concern is that we're raising an entire generation of young girls to ignore that inner voice inside of them that says, this is dangerous. I feel unsafe, and I will do something to protect myself. And every woman has had that moment. Every woman has sort of been walking in a parking lot, turned around and seen someone and said, I'm going to break out into a jog, or I'm going to duck into this pizza place. And we're raising a generation of girls who are afraid to do that because they're second guessing themselves, because they're thinking, is there something wrong with me? Am I a bigot? Person going to take it the wrong way if I break out into a run? And the answer should be, girl, you protect yourself, and who cares if someone else has hurt feelings? But those hurt feelings have now taken precedence over, the physical safety of young girls, and not just young girls, just girls in general.
What a remarkable shift this has been, and certainly not for the better. Bethany, finally, one more question for you. What is your recommendation to parents like yourself who are encountering these issues and wanting to know how to do right by their kids?
So, I mean, it depends about sort of individual circumstances. I think that the number one thing is the parents need to be aware of the laws when it comes to bathrooms. And if there are school sanctioned sleepovers, I think that they need to be aware of the law and also what's happening as far as what school policies there are. And if they are happy with those school policies or those statements, they need to speak up. But they also just need to be willing to pull their kids out and say, my daughter's not going to use that locker room. My daughter's not going to go on this sleepover. And will they be set out? Yes. But I think that there are a lot more parents than we think who are uncomfortable and who are sort of afraid to be the first one to say anything and be labeled a bigot or whatever. I mean, really, it's a bigot. But you have to be willing to take those hits to protect your child, and your child is of the utmost importance. And if someone calls you a bigot, but your child doesn't use the same locker room as a biological male, fine. If that's what it has to take, then that's what it has to take. And I think parents need to sort of arm themselves with knowledge and then be willing to sort of stand up for their kids.
That is such excellent advice about what it means to really put kids first in practice. Bethany, thank you so much for joining
Thank
us on
you.
Leveling the Playing Field today, and congratulations on the new book.
Thank you.